The silent intruders. The vastness of space stretched before Captain Maya Chen as she stood on the bridge of the Artemis, Earth's most advanced exploration vessel. The ship hummed with activity as her crew prepared for their approach to the Proxima Centauri system. After decades of preparation, humanity had finally ventured beyond its solar system, driven by an insatiable curiosity about what lay beyond. Final approach to PC-3, Captain, announced Lieutenant Rizadarian, his fingers dancing across the navigation console. The exoplanet is showing atmospheric readings consistent with our projections. Maya nodded, her dark eyes fixed on the view screen. PC-3 gleamed like a blue-green jewel against the darkness, reminding her of Earth, but with subtle differences: larger oceans, smaller continents, and unusual atmospheric patterns that suggested weather systems unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. "Life signs?" she asked, turning to Science Officer Dr. Eliza Fontaine. Eliza adjusted her sensors and frowned. "Inconclusive, but there's something unusual. Energy signatures that don't match any natural phenomena in our database. Artificial." Maya's heart raced. First contact had always been a possibility, but after exploring 3-star systems with no signs of intelligent life, most of the crew had begun to doubt they'd encounter anyone during this mission. "Possibly," Eliza confirmed. "And they're moving rapidly." Before Maya could respond, Communications Officer Jin Park straightened at his station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not on any frequency we've used before. The computer is struggling to translate." "Put it through," Maya ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen flickered, and for a moment, static filled the display. Then, gradually, an image formed. The bridge crew collectively gasped. The being on screen had an elongated cranium, iridescent blue-purple skin, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth was small and circular, and what appeared to be fine tentacles or feelers swayed gently around its neck region. "I am Vox Telenim of the Vortian Alliance," came a melodic voice, somehow bypassing their translation systems and appearing directly in their minds. "You have entered protected space." Maya stepped forward. "I am Captain Maya Chen of the Earth vessel Artemis. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship." The alien's 4 eyes narrowed simultaneously. "Your minds. They are wrong." Maya exchanged a puzzled glance with her first officer, Commander David Wells. "I'm afraid I don't understand." The alien's feelers began to twitch more rapidly. "You are fragmented, isolated, each of you, alone in darkness." The voice in their minds took on an edge of fear. "This is not possible for evolved beings." Dr. Fontaine moved closer to Maya, whispering, "Captain, I think they might be telepathic. They seem disturbed by our individual consciousness." The alien continued, its voice now broadcasting to all crew members simultaneously. "Your thoughts vanish into void spaces. You hide intentions. You think, in silence." The fear in the voice was unmistakable now. "You are void minds." "We mean no harm," Maya insisted, raising her hands in a universal gesture of peace. "Humans communicate through language, not thought. It's simply how we evolved." The alien conferred with others off-screen, their mental voices creating a buzz of anxiety that several crew members reported feeling. When Vox Telenim returned attention to them, the atmosphere had changed completely. "The Council has designated your species as void minds, a Class 1 threat to collective consciousness. You will remain in position for processing." "Processing?" Maya questioned, but the transmission cut abruptly. "Captain," called Lieutenant Darien from Tactical, "multiple vessels decloaking around us. Energy signatures powering up. They're charging weapons." "Shields up," Maya ordered. "Jin, re-establish communication. Tell them we." The first blast hit before Jin could respond, rocking the Artemis violently. Consoles sparked, and emergency alerts blared throughout the ship. "Direct hit to our port nacelle," reported Commander Wells. "Shields at 62%. Return fire, asked Weapons Officer Lieutenant Cassandra Rodriguez, her hands hovering over the controls. Maya hesitated only a moment. No, not yet. Riza, plot an escape trajectory. Maximum warp as soon as we're clear. Captain, there are 7 vessels. They're surrounding us, Reza warned. Another blast hit, more powerful than the first. The lights flickered, and several crew members were thrown from their stations. Shields at 41%, Wells reported grimly. Maya's mind raced. Cassandra, targeted EMP burst, non-lethal, just enough to create an opening. Riza, be ready to punch through the moment she fires. Cassandra nodded, programming the defensive countermeasure. The Artemis shuddered under another assault. Fire. The EMP burst erupted from the Artemis, momentarily disabling 2 of the Vortian vessels. In that brief window, Riza activated the warp drive, and the Artemis shot forward, narrowly avoiding another barrage of energy weapons. They're pursuing, Wells reported as the stars stretched into streaks outside the view screen. Can we outrun them? Maya asked, gripping her chair as the ship vibrated under the strain of emergency warp. Not indefinitely, Reza answered. Their ships are faster. We have maybe 6 hours at this velocity before they overtake us. Maya turned to Eliza. I need answers. Why did they call us void mines? What about us frightened them so badly? The science officer was already analyzing data from the encounter. Based on their reaction and the direct mental communication, I believe the Vortians are a telepathic species. Their entire society likely functions on shared consciousness, constant mental connection. And humans don't have that, Maya concluded. Exactly. To them, we're like black holes in a mental landscape. They can't sense our thoughts or intentions. We're unpredictable. Dr. Kento Ishikawa, the ship's canopsychologist, joined the conversation. In a society built on complete transparency of thought, isolation would be terrifying, perhaps even considered a form of deception or aggression by its very nature. Maya considered this. So they attacked us because they can't read our minds. I believe so, Kento confirmed. Fear often triggers violence. They see us as inherently dangerous because we operate outside their mental network. An alert chimed from Eliza's station. Captain, I've been monitoring our crew's brainwave patterns during the encounter. There's something interesting. When the aliens communicated with us, they seemed able to detect our surface thoughts, but when crew members entered states of deep concentration or focused meditation, the aliens reacted with increased fear. Maya leaned forward. Are you saying we can intentionally become more invisible to them? Theoretically, yes. If we can control our thought patterns, we might be able to amplify this void effect they find so disturbing. Commander Wells, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Captain, what if that's our advantage? They can't track what they can't sense. For the first time since the attack, Maya felt a glimmer of hope. If we can't outrun them, maybe we can hide from them. Eliza, Kento, I need you to develop a protocol for this void mind technique. Teach the crew how to mask their thoughts. It won't be easy, Kento cautioned. Controlling one's thoughts requires discipline. We have 6 hours, Maya said firmly. Make it work. As the Artemis raced through space, pursued by an enemy they barely understood, the crew began training in mental focus techniques. They learned to center their thoughts, to create what Kento called a mental null space, a state of mind that appeared as emptiness to telepathic senses. 5 hours later, the sensors detected the Vortian ships gaining ground. The moment of truth approached rapidly. We can't outrun them, Maya acknowledged. Time for Plan B. Riza. Set course for the asteroid field in the Barnard's star system. Cassandra, prepare to cut power to all non-essential systems on my mark. Captain, Wells questioned. If we can't fight them conventionally, we'll use what they fear most against them, Maya explained. Our void mines will be our weapon. As the Artemis slipped among the asteroids, the crew entered their practiced mental null state. Systems powered down, and the ship drifted silently. The pursuing Vortian vessels slowed, their sensors scanning for the human vessel. "They're searching for us," whispered Jin, careful to maintain his focused mental state. Maya nodded, her own mind carefully controlled. "And they can't find what they can't sense." On the view screen, they watched as the Vortian ships separated, methodically searching different sections of the asteroid field. One passed within kilometers of the Artemis, its powerful sensors sweeping directly over them. Yet it continued onward, giving no indication it had detected their presence. "It's working," breathed Eliza, careful to maintain her mental discipline. "They can't sense us when we're in this state." Maya's mind was already calculating their next move. Humanity had inadvertently discovered its first advantage in an interstellar conflict they never wanted. The void in their minds, once considered a limitation by the telepathic Vortians, had become their greatest asset. As the alien ships continued their fruitless search, Maya turned to her crew. "We've found our defense," she said quietly. "Now let's see if we can turn it into an offense." The humans had become ghosts in space, silent, invisible to mental detection, and now potentially lethal to those who had deemed them a threat. The Dark Thunder, as the Vortians had called it in their transmissions, was about to strike back. Ghosts of the Void. 48 hours after their narrow escape, the Artemis drifted silently at the edge of an uncharted star system. The ship had undergone a transformation, with dark matte material now covering its exterior to absorb rather than reflect light. Inside, the crew moved with purpose, their minds disciplined through constant practice of what they now called the Phantom Protocol. Captain Maya Chen stood in the briefing room, facing her senior officers. "The Vortians have established an outpost on the third planet of this system," she explained, pointing to the holographic display. "According to our scans, it appears to be a communications relay, likely part of their early warning network." Commander Wells studied the projection. Small installation, minimal defenses. They'd probably rely more on their telepathic network for security than physical barriers. "Which makes them vulnerable to us," Maya concluded. "This will be our test run. If we can infiltrate their outpost undetected, we can gather intelligence on their fleet movements and perhaps find a way to communicate with Earth about the threat we face." Dr. Fontaine adjusted the display to show a more detailed view of the outpost. "Their technology is based on crystalline structures that seem to amplify telepathic signals. If we could disrupt these crystals, we could potentially blind a portion of their network." Maya finished the thought. "Good. That's our primary objective." Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward. "I've modified our phased pistols to emit a frequency that should crack those crystals without an explosion that would alert other outposts. And I've prepared neural dampeners," added Dr. Ishikawa. "They'll help maintain our void mind state even under stress." Maya nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, all of you. We leave in 1 hour. Wells, Rodriguez, Ishikawa, and I will form the boarding party. Fontaine, you have the con." As the officers prepared for the mission, Maya retreated to her quarters for a moment of reflection. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at her. In just days, she had gone from an explorer to a guerrilla fighter in an interstellar conflict. "We never wanted this war," she whispered to herself, "but we'll end it." The shuttle approached the Vortian outpost with power systems at minimal levels, coasting on momentum. Inside, the boarding party sat in meditation, their minds carefully controlled to project emptiness to any telepathic sensors. As they drew closer, they could see the crystalline spires of the outpost gleaming under the light of an alien sun. A small landing pad held 3 Vortian shuttles, and thermal scans indicated approximately 20 life forms within the structure. "Remember," Maya whispered, breaking the silence. "Maintain the void. Move slowly. Think simply." The shuttle landed silently on the far side of a ridge, out of direct sight of the outpost. The team disembarked, each wearing the neural dampeners disguised as simple communication devices. They moved in formation toward the outpost, their movements deliberate and their thoughts carefully controlled. The first test came as they approached the perimeter. Two Vortian guards stood at the entrance, their four eyes scanning the horizon. As the humans drew near, one guard turned suddenly, looking directly toward them, but its gaze passed over them as though they were invisible. "They can't sense us," Wells breathed, his voice barely audible. The team slipped past the guards and entered the facility through an auxiliary airlock. Inside, the corridors glowed with a soft blue light emanating from the walls themselves. Vortians moved throughout the complex, their tentacle-like feelers constantly in motion. Using hand signals, Maya directed the team toward the central chamber, where the main communication crystal would be located. They passed several Vortians in the hallways, each time holding their breath as the aliens paused, their feelers twitching as though sensing something amiss, but unable to identify what disturbed them. In the central chamber, they found what they sought: a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with energy, surrounded by Vortian technicians. The humans pressed themselves against the wall, observing. "The disruption must be precise," Rodriguez whispered, preparing her modified weapon. Maya nodded, but then froze as she noticed something unexpected. On a large display screen, images of Earth appeared, detailed scans of human cities, military installations, and space defenses. The Vortians were planning an attack. "Change of plans," Maya mouthed to her team. "We need that data." Wells pointed to a control console nearby, currently unattended. Maya nodded, and they slowly made their way toward it, careful to maintain their mental discipline despite their rising alarm. As Rodriguez and Ishikawa prepared to sabotage the crystal, Maya and Wells accessed the console. The alien interface was complex, but Maya had studied xenotechnology extensively during her training. She navigated through the system, downloading critical information about Vortian fleet movements and battle plans. What she discovered chilled her to the core. The Vortians had declared all of humanity to be void minds, beings whose thoughts existed outside the universal consciousness they believed connected all intelligent life. According to their doctrine, such beings were inherently dangerous and must be eliminated before they could spread their mental darkness. A fleet of 30 warships was already assembling, preparing for a direct assault on Earth. "We need to warn home," Maya whispered, her concentration nearly breaking from the shock. At that moment, a Vortian scientist entered the room, moving directly toward the console they were using. The alien stopped suddenly, its feelers rigid with alarm. "Something is here," it communicated telepathically to the others in the room. "A void. A darkness." The other Vortians grew still, their feelers extended, searching. Maya and her team pressed themselves against the wall, doubling their mental focus, becoming as empty and still as possible in their thoughts. "The void moves," another Vortian communicated, panic rising in its mental voice. "Dark thunder is among us." Maya locked eyes with Rodriguez and gave a slight nod. In one smooth motion, Rodriguez aimed her modified weapon at the central crystal and fired. The beam struck the crystal, sending fractures racing through its structure. The crystal dimmed, then flared brilliantly before going dark. Chaos erupted as the Vortians lost their connection to the wider network. Without their telepathic link, they scrambled in confusion, unable to coordinate their response. Some clutched their heads in apparent pain, while others fled the chamber in panic. "Now," Maya ordered, abandoning stealth. "Back to the shuttle." The team ran through the corridors, no longer hiding their presence. Alarms began to sound, conventional ones, now that the telepathic network was disrupted. They encountered several disoriented Vortians, easily evading them as the aliens struggled to function without their mental connection. As they reached the exit, a larger group of Vortians blocked their path, weapons drawn. These guards, apparently trained to function independently, fired energy pulses that scorched the wall beside them. "Cover me," Maya ordered, drawing her own weapon. She fired not at the Vortians, but at the ceiling above them, causing a section to collapse and create a barrier between them. They sprinted to their shuttle, powered up the engines, and launched just as the first Vortian vessels began to rise from the landing pad in pursuit. "They'll track us back to the Artemis," Wells warned as they accelerated away from the planet. Maya smiled grimly. "No, they won't. Not if they can't sense us." She activated the comm system. "Artemis, this is Chen. Execute Operation Phantom immediately." Back on the Artemis, Dr. Fontaine implemented the protocol they had developed. The ship's engines powered down to minimal levels, and the crew entered their void mind state collectively. The Artemis effectively disappeared from mental detection, becoming a ghost in space. When the shuttle docked, Maya rushed to the bridge with the stolen data. "We need to transmit this to Earth immediately. The Vortians are planning a full-scale invasion. Conventional signals would be detected," Jin reminded her. "Then we'll use their own network against them," Maya decided. "The data shows they have relay stations throughout this sector. If we can hack into one and send a burst transmission disguised as routine Vortian communication." For the next 3 days, the Artemis moved silently through Vortian space, its crew maintaining their mental discipline around the clock. They observed Vortian fleet movements, noting how the vessels congregated around a massive command ship at the edge of the system. "That's their flagship," Maya noted, studying the scans. "If we could disable it, we might buy Earth enough time to prepare defenses." "A direct assault would be suicide," Wells argued. "Not an assault," Maya replied. "An infiltration. We've proven they can't detect us when we maintain the void mind state. What if we could board that command ship and sabotage it from within?" The plan took shape quickly. Using their observations of Vortian protocols, they determined that supply vessels regularly docked with the flagship. If the Artemis could mimic the signature of one such vessel, they might slip aboard undetected. 3 days later, the Artemis approached the massive Vortian flagship, its exterior reconfigured to resemble a Vortian supply ship. The crew maintained absolute mental discipline as they drifted into the docking bay. Once secured, Maya led a team of specialists through the towering alien vessel. The Vortians moved around them, occasionally pausing when they passed, their feelers twitching in confusion, but never raising an alarm. They reached the ship's engineering section and placed specially designed disruptors on the main power conduits, devices that would create a cascading failure in the flagship's systems when activated. As they worked, Maya accessed a central database terminal, downloading everything she could about Vortian tactics, technology, and the full extent of their fleet deployments. What she found surprised her. The Vortians weren't inherently aggressive. They were terrified. Their records showed that centuries ago, they had encountered another species with void minds who had nearly annihilated them, using their mental invisibility to launch devastating surprise attacks. The Vortians had been scanning the galaxy ever since, determined to eliminate any such threat before it could strike again. "They're acting out of trauma," Maya realized. "They're not evil. They're scared." But this understanding came too late to change their immediate situation. As Maya finished downloading the data, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. They had been discovered, not through telepathic detection, but through conventional security cameras that had finally registered the presence of intruders. "Abort," Maya ordered through her comlink. "Back to the ship. Activate the disruptors on your way." The team raced through the corridors, no longer attempting to hide. Vortian security forces converged on their position, firing energy weapons that left scorch marks on the walls. Lieutenant Rodriguez was hit in the leg, but continued moving with Wells's support. They fought their way back to the docking bay, using their phased pistols to create barriers rather than directly targeting the Vortians when possible. As they reached the Artemis, Maya activated the disruptors remotely. Throughout the flagship, systems began to fail as power surges overloaded critical components. The massive vessel shuddered, its lights flickering. "Get us out of here, Riza," Maya ordered as the last team member boarded. The Artemis disengaged from the docking clamps and accelerated away from the crippled flagship just as secondary explosions began to bloom across its hull. "They're launching fighters," Eliza reported, monitoring the sensors. Implement the Void Protocol. Maya commanded. Full mental discipline. Everyone. Minimal power signatures. As the crew entered their practiced void mind state, the Artemis seemed to fade from the Vortians' awareness. The pursuing fighters passed directly over them, their sensors unable to lock onto the human vessel that had become a ghost in space. 2 weeks later, the Artemis approached Earth, transmitting identification codes on secure channels. They were met by a defensive fleet. Earth had received their warnings and prepared accordingly. In the following months, humanity developed what became known as Ghost Protocol, the ability to conceal not just their thoughts, but entire ships and even space stations from Vortian detection. This ability, this dark thunder, as the Vortians called it, became humanity's greatest defense. When the Vortian invasion fleet finally arrived, they found not a helpless planet, but a solar system protected by vessels that appeared and disappeared at will, striking with precision before vanishing again into the void of space. Eventually, a peace was negotiated. The Vortians, recognizing they could not defeat an enemy they could barely detect, agreed to recognize human territory. In time, limited diplomatic relations were established, with specially trained human telepaths serving as intermediaries. Captain Maya Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood on the observation deck of Earth's largest space station, watching as the first official Vortian diplomatic vessel approached. Beside her stood Dr. Ishikawa, who had pioneered the integration of telepathic humans into the diplomatic corps. "Do you think they'll ever truly understand us?" Kento asked. Maya considered this. Perhaps not completely. Our minds evolved differently. But understanding isn't always necessary for coexistence.